So let's take a comfortable seat to begin. Now, if you find sitting down on the ground, do that. Use a prop of some description, a book or a rolled up blanket or a cushion. And if it's uncomfortable, sit in a chair. No big deal, makes no difference. Either way, however you sit, I want you just to pay attention to your spine and the length of your spine, so you're not in that kind of slouched position that we so often end up in. A sense of this mid-region just getting long. So even as we begin, let's hold the ribs, take some deeper breaths, and as you fill the ribs, just lift one side up and lift the other side up. First side and second side. Just to breathe into that space of the rib cage, to lift it and expand it and create some lightness as the tissue decompresses. I'm going to do more work with this as we move through our practice this morning. So just a few deep breaths, trying to feel all sides. And this is one of the reasons we hold the hands in this position, because the fingers are on the front, middle of that space between the thumb and the fingers on the side of the ribs, and then the thumb itself is on the back of the ribs. So that's the three sides of your ribs connected to. And you can feel then as you breathe that you're getting to move all sides evenly. And this is what we're practicing. And the more we practice, the more in our kind of day-to-day breathing that we'll begin to work in this way, or have a sense of the ribs moving in that way. And it begins to really affect the dynamics of the lungs themselves in terms of the result we're getting from our lungs. They're designed to do a particular job, and they're not really doing it for most of us. Only 5 to 10% of the lungs are really working efficiently. So when we are waking up these muscles that dominate the lungs, that look after the lungs, and you're getting them to work as a system or a team, it means your breathing is going to really begin to be dramatically improved. And then, of course, we know that breath, oxygen that we bring into the body, is a huge effect on our overall vitality and well-being. And particularly with this, this virus stuff that's going on, it's interesting that so much of it is located around the lungs. And if our lungs are working well, then their ability to fight off infection is vastly increased. So this would be a great practice, every day, to hold the lungs and really breathe into all sides. And you're building a familiarity to what it feels like to begin to work the ribs, lungs in this kind of a way. Equally, one of the reasons that we don't work the lungs efficiently, and the muscles that support the lungs don't work efficiently, is because this kind of area, we sometimes refer to it in our practice as the heart space. And it's protecting that space of the heart. That idea of the heart is protected by the ribs and the lungs. So, of course, the inclination with our nervous system is to tighten and hunker down, to go into kind of protection mode. And when you take those deep breaths, you're beginning to dissolve that patterning of our nervous system, that protective patterning that is appropriate at times in our lives when it is important to protect ourselves. But, most of us, most of the time, don't need to be in protection mode. We just don't need it. But our nervous system is kind of set to a protection many, many years ago. We could talk about the idea of ancestral lines and epigenetics and, running away from dinosaurs, and that our nervous systems in some respects haven't evolved in the way other aspects of our lives may have evolved. So our work is turning in and beginning to recognize, well, what are these old programs and patterns that I'm carrying around that really aren't serving me or aren't related to reality? A lot of what we carry is old wounding, old stories, old programs. And because we haven't kind of addressed them, tuned into them, processed them, made ourselves aware, brought them into the light of awareness, they get stuck in our systems, and they begin to create a kind of a compartmentalization in our bodies, where certain parts are kind of disconnected, stop working on old rhythms. So even our tendency with our ribs is the front moves and the sides and the back sleep. They become dormant and heavy. And then this whole top area becomes a much more compressive structure and pushes down into the lower back and the hips, and becomes, in a sense, a dead weight, because it's not vital, it's not alive in the sense of the potential that our bodies can experience in terms of the movement, the pulsation that's moving through us, the life force that's moving through us. And what we're really interested in through our practice is how we begin to open up all these different parts, how we begin to support the channels of communication between all the different parts. So there's a movement of energy and information through our beings that really allows us to experience life in a way that is richer and deeper. And it allows us to really play with or access this idea of presence, this idea of being present. And how often in our lives or in our day-to-day are we simply not present? We're pulled off into some thought pattern, idea, the past, the future, and that becomes a habit of the sympathetic nervous system. It gives us information. It kind of reminds us, that this part is dominant. And then these practices are very simple, straightforward ways of beginning to work with the nervous system and affect it and create shift and change and bring us into our potential, into all of that capacity to experience life in ways that are simply richer. Richer. It's a richer experience for us. And I suppose it's probably fair to say that all of us had these moments in which life becomes richer, and there can be these pinnacle moments in our lives, maybe a moment with someone you love, or the birth of a child, or even the death of someone you love. These really important moments in our lives where we're alive, where we kind of override a lot of the habitual programming that we carry around, and we see in a different way. We see things much more clearly and sharply. Colors become more vivid. And then our tendency is, we end up back in our habits of seeing the world, of experiencing ourselves. And, for most people, that has a dullness to it, has a deadness to it. So these practices are really about opening up all of these spaces, releasing what's trapped in there, and beginning to let life infuse us again. So it's important to recognize and remember that as you're moving through the practices, emotions might come up, thoughts might come up, strong feelings might come up, and that's all perfect, because what is it's just coming up to move through you and be released. And this is a revelationary practice. It's about creating revelation, revealing what's in there, seeing what's in there, so we can then begin to release it and let it go and ultimately become lighter. So the idea of, in Sanskrit there's this beautiful word, lagima. And lagima refers to lightness of being. And wouldn't that be an amazing way to feel about our lives and about ourselves and about each other, about being in the world? And it doesn't negate that there is suffering in the world, and that indeed there is suffering in our lives. That's part of being a human being. That's part of the deal of being in this world. There is suffering there. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be able to experience lightness and joy. Yeah, and it's a tricky balance for us, Quite often we can get stuck with the perspective of the darkness as all-consuming. And this is, again, very much part of the collective sympathetic nervous system. So the idea of the sympathetic nervous system within us that is about protecting is very much fear-based, is unable to trust, is stagnant, doesn't want to change, doesn't want to grow, scared of all of that, all of the unknown. And then there's the idea of this collective sympathetic nervous system that really dominates our society, is really prevalent in our society, in our modern society. It's the news is full of it. It's all the angling toward what feeds that negativity, what feeds that fear. And it stops us from really being able to experience the more joyous qualities, and they can be the simplest of things, watching a sunrise, those little simple moments that feed something else inside of us. And in some ways our practice is giving ourselves permission to do that, to take those moments and guard ourselves, protect ourselves, look after ourselves in a different way, that we're kind of protecting an aspect of ourselves that is connected to our freedom, to our love, to our compassion, to our joy, and our capacity to really reach into those places within ourselves. It's almost like it's a door that can very easily get stuck, and our practice is just loosening up the hinges, letting that door be able to open in the face of whatever else might be there for us or in our lives. Okay, so we're sitting. We're as comfortable as you can be. We've done a little work at creating that length in the torso, so we're not in that slumped position. Part of what you might acknowledge is the little bit of effort that's required to sit you up, because it's a position most of us are not used to maintaining. And part of what we work with through our practice is a balance between the effort and the work that is required to do whatever poses we're going to be in or whatever positions we're going to find. But at the same time, what we're interested when we're in those places is not only acknowledging what's difficult or uncomfortable or what requires effort, but we're seeing, can we cultivate a capacity of ease even with the effort? The capacity of what we could talk about as spaciousness, a quality of allowing, these more at ease qualities. And we're seeing, can we play a game of balancing the two? And what tends to happen when we're going into places that are difficult is, again, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in and we're kind of with the discomfort, we're with the pain. And even though some of the places we're going to go this morning will require effort and will be uncomfortable, and we watch in terms of how far we go, but we're seeing, can we develop this relationship to the breath, to the awareness, to that more spacious aspect of our nature. Again, those moments where we feel that sense of deeper connection. And we're really going to see, can we bring that into the tighter spaces, into the more contracted or difficult spaces. So it's a game. And if you notice as you're moving through your practice that you get tight, that it's kind of more work than anything else, the invitation is to back off a little, to put some effort again into just feeling, noticing, breathing, settling. And again, then it's just this play of, can you then bring that into the work and the effort? And the same principle applies in our day-to-day lives. This is what we're trying to do. Can we bring that more spacious quality within us, that more expansive aspect of ourselves, into our day-to-day? Those places that maybe get a bit mundane or get repetitive or get contracted, or those difficult moments in which we find ourselves triggered or uncomfortable. Where's the more spacious us in those moments? And it's a practice, you practice just like riding a bicycle. You get up, you maybe you fall off, you get up, you fall off, you get up, and you keep practicing and you keep practicing. And again, it's like the hinges on that door into our spaciousness become more fluid, and our relationship to the more spacious aspect of ourselves becomes more familiar and also more skillful. That, in moments where we would generally just not remember to think about spaciousness or to connect into our breath, we'll begin to remember, oh yeah, breathe. Okay. So let's close the eyes. You can rest the hands wherever is comfortable. Let your belly relax. Notice your breath. Just notice it. Now, if it's possible, I want you to breathe through your nose. If it's possible, breathe through your nose. If it's not possible, it doesn't matter. Just notice your breath. And then we're going to begin to deepen the breath. So inhale for a count of 5 and exhale for a count of 5. And watch the breath. So again, there's this balance, because of course when you're taking that deeper breath, it does require effort. But can there also be that spacious quality to the breath? So watch it, observe it. No part is pushed, forced. Slow, long, deep, expanding. So again, feel how the ribs are filling with the inhalation. And if you find 5 is too much, do 4. If that's too much, do 3. Doesn't matter. Slow, long, deep breath. And the exhalation is again slow, comfortable, fluid. 2 minutes like this. Stay with your breath. Slow, deep breath. Just a few more of these deeper breaths. Perfect. And then let the breath come back to its natural rhythm. Okay. So in this seated position, we will move very soon. We're going to take the hands again to the ribs. We're going to hold the ribs one more time. Thumbs at the back, fingers at the front. We're holding the lower ribs. So we're above the waist. Yes, we're not on the waist. We're above the waist. And again, I want you to breathe in a way that allows all sides to move. Now, as you do that, there needs to be a little bit more effort through the back and the sides just to create a balance of movement. And as you feel the ribs expanding out, I want you to even press in with the hands. So you're just giving the ribs a little more work to do, to push into something a little bit more solid. And again, it'll just help all of these muscles wake up. And as you're filling the ribs, can we again lift the ribs up? Can we pull the ribs away from the hips, one side and then the other? And breathe. And we're going to try to bring all of this fullness with us. We're going to arc a little bit more to the left. That's it. Breathe into what you're meeting. So enjoy that stretch on the right side. Try to again maintain as much of the fullness even on the two sides. And we'll come back. Deep expanding breath. We'll go in the other direction. Breathe. Perfect. Come on back. Fill them up again. One more time. We'll arc to the first side. So if we go to the arc to the left, can we put the left hand then down on the mat? So you can push the left hand into the floor, and that's going to help the right hip buttock anchor a little bit more. So you can get a slightly deeper stretch on that side. And then just notice, where's the tension? Is it in the hip, the waist, in the ribs? Wherever it is, that's where the focus is. Wherever you notice the most contraction, that's where you're invited to bring the spaciousness, that idea of breathing into, that ease of awareness. So if you go too deep and it's too contracted, it's too consuming, then it's much more difficult to stay spacious with it. You got to work out how deep you go. Breathe 3, breathe 2, breathe 1, and we'll come all the way back. We'll hold again the two sides, we fill and lift. We'll arc in the other direction, right hand goes to the floor. Take your time. Again, breathing into what you're meeting in the body. And breathe for 3. Breathe for 2. And for 1. Perfect, you got it. Okay, great. So let's come up to stand. Now, if you were sitting on something soft, see if you've got some books around you could use. And you see the height I have of this brick. It's a couple of inches high. Okay, you can also roll up your yoga mat and you can use that. So we just want something. And what we're going to do is we're going to place the balls of the feet on the support, be it the books or the rolled up mat or whatever it might be. The balls of the 2 feet. I'm going to get 2 bricks. Now, you might want to put a hand on a wall for support, for balance. So please be careful. 2 feet. So we've got the balls of the feet on the bricks. The heels are floating. The toes are gripping. So it's important the toes are active and they stay down on the bricks as best you can. You might notice they want to lift. If they do, that's fine. But the intention is to keep them anchored. And then you're seeing, can you lower your heels, keeping the toes active, and pulse them up? And it doesn't have to be a very big motion at all. It can be the smallest of motions. And the feet, the lower legs, the knees, all of these areas now are being woken up. And it's important the toes stay active. The toes have a huge role to play in terms of, obviously how the feet work, but also there's a reaction, a chain reaction from the feet up through the legs. And what we call the posterior chain, the way in which particularly the muscles of the back work and activate, and the toes dominate them. If the toes aren't working, and this is a big predicament for us in the West, is because we have our shoes trapped in these little, or our feet trapped in these little shoes, the toes aren't doing their job, and it disengages the back body. It weakens our back bodies. So really strengthening the feet and the toes is huge. And even if you don't have a support, you can just have your feet on the floor and you can spread the toes and you can just pulse the heels up and slowly down, up and slowly down. Just as effective. In fact, much simpler. Maybe we should have just done this. It's just a little bit more advanced using the supports. Sometimes you could also use a stair, like you could be on the bottom stair with a hand on the banisters. Again, you want the ball of the toes. So you want what we call the paw of the foot, the toes and the ball of the toes. That's the area that you want to be anchored on something solid. And that stays down as you learn to get lighter through the heel and the arches of the feet. And what are the heavy parts of most of our feet? The arches collapse and we tend to dump weight into the heel of the foot. So you're retraining. It's like a whole different way of working the feet. And again, the more you practice, the more your feet will remember that they don't want to work the old way. Again, the old way is a sympathetic nervous system. Even dropping the heels heavily on the earth, lifting the toes or keeping them stuck, all of that's protection mechanism. So it cuts off parts of the body, it disconnects. We're interested in the opposite, opening up. Okay, so the feet are hip distance and parallel. We're going to keep the weight forward in the 2 feet. We're going to take our fingers to our groins. I want you just to palpate and feel the groins a little. Just notice that space. And then can you keep the gaze forward and begin to sit the bum back a little. So you're going into a squatting motion, but the weight stays forward in the 2 feet. Okay. Now again, You could also put your hands on a wall for balance or on the back of a chair, whatever works for you. Keep the weight forward. I want to see, can we sit a little deeper, maintaining the lumbar arch? So most of us could go down and we tighten the belly and we round the back, but we're not doing that. The weight is forward, belly is long, there's an arch in the lower back, glutes are active in these positions, and then we just come up, and then we sit back, and we come up, and we sit back. Very simple. You can have the fingers on the groins, you can have the fingers or the hands on the base of the buttocks. That'll give you good information too. You can support yourself on a wall or a chair. That's it. You're not letting the knees go closer together. So if anything, as you bend, the knees might even go slightly apart. And that just really, again, helps the bones aligning in terms of supporting the joints. The knee joints, of course, are the vulnerable parts. But you keep the feet active and your knees are supported in a way they're usually not supported. That's it. So can you go down into that squatting pose, take the two arms forward. Weight is still forward. In fact, some of us could even hover our heels just off the floor. Deep breath into the ribs. Imagine you're breathing into the armpits. Even a little shrug through the shoulders. Stretch out through the fingers. Stretch out through the fingers. Could you lift the arms a little higher, lifting the gaze at the same rate? Breathe 5. Stretch out through the fingers. Breathe 4, 3, 2, 1. And then come all the way up. Shake it out a little. Shake the legs. Roll the shoulders. Okay. Let's bring it up to the shoulders and the upper body again. Let's take the right hand behind our back. So we slide the hand up the back wherever it goes to, and the left hand comes up, and the fingers of the two hands are pointing toward each other, or you're clasping. So whatever is available, okay? And then all I want you to do is breathe into where your hands are. Breathe into that space in the back. Breathe into that space in the back. Breathe into that space in the back. That's it. Stay with that. You'll notice it tends not to want to move initially. We're not used to breathing into these areas. Just stay with it for a few more rounds, a few more breaths. Perfect. Okay. The top elbow stretches up. Wherever is available. Again, remember that balance that we're working with. So there's a balance between the effort, and then we're also interested in looking for the freedom or the space. And this is the idea that being in the world with all of its challenges and still pointing ourselves in the direction of joy or contentment or, those more spacious qualities, that we know that when we're accessing those qualities, we become healthier. Our systems work better. Our nervous system is more relaxed. Our immune system is able to fight off infection. If what dominates us is the more contracting emotions and feelings, chemicals, then we just get sick. We're not designed to be dominated by those. Yes, it's part of the world. As you stretch up through the top elbow, that left elbow, can you begin to arc a little to the right? So again, we're just lengthening the side body a little bit more. Breathe into what you're meeting. Breathe into what you're meeting. Breathe 3, 2, 1, and then release that, release. Have a little shrug, roll of the shoulders. Okay, let's do the second side. Second side. And again, as the hands get there, you're breathing into the back where the hands are. You're trying to feel that expanding backwards of the back or outwards of the back. Stay with the breath. Stay with the body. And then we're going to begin to take the top elbow upward. Again, wherever you're noticing tension, maybe it's the tricep. And then we begin to arc so that if the right arm is up, we're arcing to the left. Vice versa. And breathe. Breathe for 3. Breathe for 2. Breathe for 1. Beautiful work. And we come all the way back. And as you release the arms, we're going to roll the shoulders. Shrug, roll them one direction. And then we roll them the other direction. Okay, this time, let's take the left hand to the back of the neck. I want you to cup the back of the neck and then just squeeze it. So you're holding the back of the neck, kind of got the heel of the hand on one side and the fingertips on the other side. And then just notice what's going on. Notice the sides, the back, squeeze around the spine. Just feel into it. Feel into it. You will probably find a few tight, nodule-y bits. So the neck is a huge kind of disconnected part of our bodies. It's generally out of alignment, and it can be very slightly so, but it's enough to kind of shut it down. A big part of that is the tightness of the rib cage, because of course if the ribs are contracted, the shoulders are lower than they're designed to be, and that creates a stress for our neck. So the work we've been doing with filling and opening and expanding the rib cage becomes a support for the shoulders and for the neck. So as you're holding the left hand at the back of the neck, take the right hand to the front of the throat. Okay, so you're just holding the cylinder of your neck. I want you to bring the two elbows toward each other. So you're broadening the back as you do that. Now, very simple. First thing is I want you to breathe into the ribs. And as you're breathing into the ribs, can you have a sense of the shoulders and collarbone and the movement that you're creating as you're breathing into that space? So again, we're interested in these moments or these points at which the body is fuller. Yeah, and this kind of ties into the idea of our intrinsic fullness. So the sympathetic nervous system, the fear-based protection aspect of our nature, of course, doesn't believe we're full or complete. If it did, it wouldn't be scared. But that tends to be the story that we unconsciously articulate to ourselves and is woven through the body. The body holds that and goes into positions that kind of maintain that idea. So when you're taking these deep breaths, each deep, conscious, expanding breath is a movement from the sympathetic into the parasympathetic. It's a movement into fullness. Yeah. So we work on the premise, yoga works on the premise that we are full. We mightn't believe it, but it's the truth. We're full, we're complete, there's nothing missing. It'd be like looking at a baby and saying, well, the baby will be complete when it grows up. We know a baby is full as a baby. In the same way, we are full in every single moment. Even though we got our stuff and our issues and we could be better at this or that or the other, we're full. Okay, so as you hold that, the elbows come in, they point forward. You're pressing the neck back into the hand. The ribs are full, and then very simple, just begin to tilt the elbows up a little, letting the chin lift, letting the throat open. You're still pressing the neck back. So the front of the throat's getting a little longer. The back of the neck is engaging and arching. Perfect. We just pause here and just a few breaths again into the ribs, into the back of the ribs in particular. Breathe, breathe. Think of a broad upper back. Breathe 3, breathe 2, breathe 1, and then release that. Perfect. You got it. Great. Okay, so we're going to come down now to hands and knees, onto all fours. Hands and knees. And when you get onto hands and knees, I want you to close your eyes. Let your hips begin to sway. Let your belly and lower back begin to soften. Take those long, deep breaths into the rib cage, all those spaces you've been working with. Shrug a little through the shoulders. Make all of this movement as simple and easy and fluid as you can. That's it, just breathe and move and feel and flow. And you'll meet pockets of tightness or contraction. You'll meet places that are spacious and fluid, just to notice all of that. Just another minute of moving like this. Perfect. Okay. So we're going to come down onto the forearms. Interlace the fingers, walk the elbows right in together initially. And as the forearms come in, of course, the back, the shoulder blades will broaden again. I want you to breathe into that space. And even as you breathe into the shoulder blades, can you press down through the forearms? Long, deep breath into that space. Now, notice where the head and the neck are. And the tendency is they want to drop forward, not just because we're in this position, but because this is what normally happens. It's just a very well-trodden direction for the neck. Imagine you were holding the neck again, same way we just did. Imagine you were holding it and you were pressing the neck into the hand, and the front of the throat felt open, and you're still with the breath in the back. And keeping the connection to the upper back and the broadness, separate the elbows now until they're shoulder distance apart. Still pressing down through the forearms, little shrugging through the shoulders, very simple. The idea that as you shrug a little through the shoulders, that you could get a little longer or fuller in your rib cage. Okay, let's stay with the fullness of that upper back. Keep the neck and head elevated. Let the belly and the lower back relax again. So quite often the belly overworks. The belly, does far, far too much work. Let it soften here, and without moving the legs, press the thighs away from each other, like you're trying to push the knees apart. Now breathe into what you're meeting. Breathe into what you're meeting. One more thing, without moving, could you try dragging the elbows backwards toward the knees? And notice the way the belly, which is long, begins to feel stronger, begins to tone. Stay with it. And again, remember that balance between effort and grace, or effort and space. Breathe. Part of you is settled, part of you is working. Breathe 3. Breathe 2. Breathe 1. And then we soften, and we're going to come back up onto the hands. Okay. Now on your hands, lower back relaxes. Deep breath in the ribs. We're going to bend the elbows a few inches to the sides of the room, and without moving, the fingers, hands are working. We pull the hands toward each other without moving them. And then we're going to keep the resistance that we feel in the body and re-straighten the arms. And then the same thing with the legs we just did, without moving, push the knees away from each other. Let the belly, lower back relax again. So it's almost a sense of you're kind of sticking the butt up a little. Without moving one more time, could we drag the hands backwards? So again, it connects you to a tautening, a long and strong belly. Breathe 3, breathe 2. Keep the alignment, keep pressing the knees apart, walk the arms toward the right. Just begin to arc to the right. So from the left waist all the way to the left shoulder, that lengthening, I want you to breathe into what you're meeting. Breathe into what you're meeting. Breathe. Breathe 3, 2, 1. And then we'll come all the way back through center. Little shake back in center just to release. We begin again. Press the knees apart. Fill the ribs up like the balloon, and we'll walk the arms in the other direction. So that lengthening then of the right side from the hip, we're not twisting the hip forward. By pressing the thighs and knees apart, you're trying to maintain a stabilizing quality in the pelvis. So one part stabilizes, it creates a boundary, so another part then can begin to play with opening and unfolding. And this is the game, and this is how our nervous systems work. When there's a sense of safety, boundary, foundation, home, we feel safe, and the tissue begins to open up. The spirit begins to open up. Things begin to unfold and dilate. Walk the arms back to center. So we're back on the hands and knees again. Very simple here, very simple. We're trying to maintain the curvature in the spine. So the belly and the lower back are relaxed. The ribs are expanded. The neck is lifted. Left leg goes straight back, horizontal. Right arm goes forward, horizontal. Now that's it, breathe. And we'll bring them both down, and we'll go to the second side. Stay with the breath. And we bring them down. First side again. And we bring them down. Second side one more time. Perfect. And we bring them down. Okay. From here, could we slide the left arm over to the right so we come down onto the left shoulder and the side of the head? Now, if they don't come down, that's perfect. Wherever you end up, whatever is accessible, and I want you just to pause. And again, wherever you're noticing the tightening or the twisting, that's where you're breathing into. And the idea of just pausing and breathing and taking a few moments. Inhaling and exhaling. Stay with the breath. And then let's come out and we'll go to the second side. Go to the second side. And when you get in there, just take your time, get as comfortable as you can. Again, you determine how far you go into this. Maybe the shoulder and head don't come down. And you're breathing into the tightness. You're breathing into the tightness. Breathe 3, 2, 1. And we'll come up. Okay. And then as you come up, I want you to come all the way up under the hand or up under the knees, high on the knees. For a moment, we're just going to close the eyes, soften the belly. You're doing as little work as you can to be in this position. And you notice the breath. Just noticing the inhalation and exhalation. Perfect. And then let's take the left leg forward. And when you bring the left leg forward, we're going to keep the left ankle slightly forward of the left knee. Okay? The back foot, toes are pointing away from you, so you've got the toenails and the top of the back foot on the floor. I want you to spread the toes in the 2 feet, and you press the toes in the positions they're in down. Press the top of the back foot, the ball of the front foot, press them into the earth. Just try to anchor them down into the floor. And what we talk about is the idea of earth energy. So earth energy, the solidity of the earth, is about safety, anchor, being part of something bigger, being connected to something. And you think then of what that offers or avails us. When we feel like we're part of something bigger, things begin to dilate, open, become receptive. It becomes more, everything becomes more enlivened. So keep it. It means the back leg has to work a little bit more than usual. I want you to maintain that. Take the hands to the ribs as we've done before. Fill the ribs up, lift the ribs up, and then bring that with you as you let the hips begin to sink forward. Now, if your back knee is sensitive, you can pad it, you can put something underneath it. If you work the back foot firmly, the back knee will be less weighted. So stay with it. Breathe. The hips sinking to whatever feels available. You're trying in particular to keep the back ribs expanded and full. They're going to want to tighten. Breathe. And then wherever the tightness is, wherever you're feeling it, you're breathing into that space again. Or imagining you could breathe into that space. Breathe. Breathe 3. And breathe 2. Breathe 1. And then we'll bring the hips all the way back. Release. We'll step one leg back, second side, same position. Before we go anywhere else, notice your breath. Just tune into the breath. So it's all of these ways in which in which we are connected is what we're trying to be aware of, and what we tend to get caught up in. And again, this is part of the nervous system and how prolific the kind of unconscious patterning of the sympathetic nervous system is, because it's all about separation. It's all about, I'm not safe. That's the underlying story. And sometimes then we forget or have forgotten to feel into the ways in which we actually are connected or supported or are part of something bigger. Tuning into your breath, and this is why the breath has been used for thousands of years as a meditation tool. The breath has that quality of connection woven through it. You think about it, like we breathe something from the outside inward. So it connects us to the outer and inner worlds. We all breathe the same stuff effectively. So it connects us to everything. The breath, although it works on the physical, of course, it feeds us physically. It also has a kind of an unseen quality to it. So it's about bridging that gap between the seen and the unseen, the visible and the invisible. It's about unifying, and this is what our practice is all about. We go down then to the foundation and the feet, and we feel into the solidness of the floor beneath us. And again, maybe the head doesn't get it, but the nervous system does get it. Nervous system is very simple in that way. You feel into it, you anchor into it, then bring that with you as you fill the ribs up and let the hips begin to sink forward. Whatever's available, you get to choose. You can pause anywhere you like. Stay with the breath. Keep the feet active. And enjoy it, enjoy it. Breathe for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then we'll come all the way back, all the way back. We're going to step back and come to hands and knees again. Hands and knees. Step the knees back a little bit, let the lower back relax and the hips sway and the shoulders shrug. Long, deep breaths, close the eyes, and again, just feel the body. Just feel and notice. Notice the inhalations and exhalations. Okay, very simple. 2 legs go over to the left. We'll lower the hips to the right. We'll come onto the right shoulder and all the way over onto our backs. Okay. And when you're on your back with your 2 knees bent, bring the 2 legs together. Cross the left leg all the way over the right leg, thigh over thigh. We're going to move our hips a little to the left, and we're going to let the legs drop comfortably over to the right, wherever they go to. Now you might want to put a support underneath the legs. Again, this idea of letting them rest on something solid, if that feels appropriate. And then just enjoy what you're meeting. Breathe and settle and soften. And again, an opportunity to breathe into wherever the tension is, wherever you're noticing the twist, the tightness, to be aware of that space and to bring the spaciousness into the tightness. Breathe. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to bring the 2 legs back to center, uncross the legs, and we'll take the right over the left. We'll move the hips a little to the right, and we'll let the 2 legs begin to tilt over to the left. And again, none of this needs to be forced or strained. You can put a brick or a book or a cushion underneath the legs if you wish. And then just breathe into what you're meeting. Breathe into the tightness. exhaling. Perfect. We'll bring the two legs back to center again. We're going to uncross the legs one more time. Slide the right leg out along the floor. Hold the back of the left thigh with the two hands. So just interlace the fingers behind the thigh. Now before you take the leg up, I want you to do a few things. Take a few deeper breaths. Shrug the shoulders a little bit away from the hips toward the ears and then down toward the floor. So we're looking for that quality of fullness in the ribs. Slowly let's take the leg we're holding upward then, wherever you get to. Now you can see the foot that's up there. I want you to move the foot, spread the toes, move the foot in circles. Notice the tightness in the foot and the leg that you're getting to connect into. And when you meet somewhere that feels tight, I want you to actually pause in that space and take a few breaths. Now we're going to keep that leg up there. Take the arms down and wide, and we're bringing the left leg over toward the right. And you might find it goes over an inch or 2 inches or a foot, or you might find it goes all the way to horizontal. And when you get to where you are, pause, breathe. Breathe into wherever you're noticing the tightness. Now the two arms are wide on the floor. And I want you to see, can you slide the left arm a little closer to your ear, like you're just sliding it above your head on the floor. So you're stretching the fingers away from the hip. And again, breathe into wherever you're noticing tension or tightness then. Breathe 3, 2, 1. And then bring the leg back up, let the arm release back to where it was. Release the leg all the way down to the floor and let your whole body be still. Just notice. Okay. Let's hold the back of the right leg with the two hands. Again, a few deeper breaths, a little shrugging in the shoulders, drop the shoulders, take the leg up toward the sky, move the foot, the toes. As you find tightness, pause and breathe. So much of our practice is finding these contracted spaces, and we're using the body, this embodied practice, but it's the same principle to the contracted moments or ideas, and we stay present with them. We're just with that spacious awareness. We're bringing it into the contraction. It's changing, becoming more receptive. So we keep the leg up, we bring the arms down and wide, and we bring the right leg over to the left. We let it tilt wherever it wishes to go to. And when you get there, breathe. And then the right arm is sliding closer to the ear, just up like a diagonal, like a kind of, half a V shape, away from the hip, stretching out. And again, wherever the tension is, wherever the tightness is where you're breathing. Breathe 3. Breathe 2. Perfect. And then let's bring the leg back up. Slide the arm back. Release the leg down. Whole body rests. Whole body relaxes. Just notice the breath. Okay, we're going to do one more thing now before we come into Shavasana. Two knees are bent. Let's take our left ankle over our right thigh. Left ankle over our right thigh. We're going to move the hips a little to the left and drop the two legs over to the right. Now, you might find that the left foot goes all the way to the floor. Great. If so, the sole of the foot is flat on the floor. You might find the foot wants to stay a little higher. That's perfect as well. If the foot stays higher, you might slip a book or a cushion underneath it, or you might not. Your call. Now, if it's accessible, the right hand can hold the left foot or the left ankle. Yeah, you can hold the top of the foot or the ankle if it's accessible. If it feels like it's too far away, forget about it. Doesn't matter. Makes no difference. The foot stays where it is. The top knee on its own tilts away from you. Now, again, this is just about bringing you into some of the tightness, specifically in the left hip here. And as you're noticing that tightness, you pause and you breathe. So it's not about having to get the top knee further. It's just going far enough that it brings you into the tightness in the hip. And then your job is to relax around the tightness, to breathe into the tightness. Stay with it. Very simple. The top leg relaxes, the left leg relaxes. And then you just pick up the left foot and slide it over the right leg, and it brings us all the way back to where we began. Hips back to center, 2 feet on the floor, and then we'll cross the right ankle over the left thigh. We'll move the hips a little to the right. We'll let the legs drop to the left, sole of the foot either on the floor or facing the floor. Right hand, if it's accessible, left hand holds the right foot or ankle. And again, the top knee just beginning to tilt away, just bringing you into the tightness in the hip. And as you meet it, again, it's that balance between the discomfort, the tightness, the work, the effort, and your capacity to breathe and soften and be at ease. Couple more breaths here. Great, okay. So let that leg relax, lift the right foot over, slide yourself back to center. Can we bring the soles of the 2 feet together, let the 2 knees drop apart? Soles of the feet together, 2 knees drop apart. Rest the 2 hands in the lower belly. Just rest one hand on top of the other. Elbows stay down on the floor. If you find the legs in this position is uncomfortable, that you can't relax, simply slide the 2 legs out. Can the awareness, the attention rest beneath the hands? That's it, and stay with the breath. Keep the attention with the breath. Slide one leg out and then slide the other leg out, letting the feet stay wider than the hips. The intention, stay with your breath. Allow your body to sink down into your mat. let the attention come back to your breath without moving or shifting, just noticing the breath as it is. Just noticing how you're feeling. And then could you begin to take some deeper breaths, and as you do that, begin to move a little. Stretch in whatever way feels good. And then eventually bending your knees one at a time, and rolling over to your right side and getting comfortable here on your side. Use your hand to your arm like a pillow. And just for a few more moments, can we pause? Can you just be still and notice the breath? And this amazing, beautiful idea of stillness as our intrinsic nature. That all the movement in the world arises out of stillness. And that somehow we get caught up in the illusion of our separateness from that stillness. It becomes unfelt, unexperienced. And the movement then of our lives in some way becomes poorer because of that, less rich. So our practice of supporting our capacity to drop into that place of stillness, of being able to rest in that space, to find that space within ourselves. And then we bring it into the more contracted experience of the movement of our lives. You know, this idea that we've come from a formless, everything comes from this formless nature and into form. Sometimes this idea of light hitting a prism, this white light, this one expansive white light hits a prism and it breaks into all these different colors, the idea that it breaks into all these different versions of itself, all these different versions of us, that we're all this one white light. And yet, for us conceptually, it's difficult to hold that idea or even feel that idea. And yet, through practices like this, as we begin to dissolve some of the holdings in there, some of the blocks in there, as we work with the breath, with the awareness, there's a deeper sense of that stillness. And then we're playing with seeing, can we bring this into our lives? Can we bring it more and more and more into our day-to-day lives? So even as you go off after our practice this morning, you go off and you do your, whatever it is, wash a dish or do laundry or sit down and have a cup of coffee or whatever it might be, can you know this space? Even in a conversation, can you be aware of this underlying presence? And it's just about a relationship. We're just getting used to it. We're not used to it yet, most of us. Take your time, come on up and sit. Come on up. Okay, so you get comfortable in your seat, just like we did at the beginning. If you want to go sit in a chair, please feel free to do that. Okay, when you get there, close your eyes, bring your hands together in front of the heart. Let your belly soften. We're going to make a little bit of sound. And the sound, like the movement, like the breath work, the sound is such an incredible vehicle for transformation. Like when you use sounds that are attuned to something high, something clear, it's an incredible way of beginning to shift our states of awareness, to shift us out of, particularly if we're locked in something that's contracted or difficult or uncomfortable. You come to chanting, to saying something like we're going to do, and it really begins to shift stuff. It changes our perspective. It allows us to get a bigger picture again. So a very simple sound is Om. Om. Yeah? Okay. Sound Om. Take a deep breath. Just 3 more. So all the stuff that gets in the way, all the stuff that gets in the way of us seeing ourselves more clearly, of experiencing life more fully. And in one sense we could talk about the idea that they're all simply illusions. Or in some way that they're old patterns or wounding or traumas. And we're exploring our capacity, our ability to begin to release and let go of what no longer serves us, what we don't need to be carrying around, lightening our load. So we take the hands up to our forehead and then back to our lips and then back to the heart and then to to ourselves and to each other this morning. We bow. Namaste. Good work, guys. So thank you very much for joining me. We're back Wednesday, 10:15 Wednesday, so Wednesdays and Sundays here on YouTube. We've got a course going on at the moment on Thursday evenings, 2-hour practice. So it's a slow, deep practice. It's very much a dive deep practice. And you can sign up. There's 4 more of those happening. You can sign up for one or all of those if you wish. And then September we're doing a month meditation. So that'll be live in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. And then the recording is available, so you could do it at any time of the day if that suits you better. And all of that's on my website, Michael Ryan Yoga. And I hope you have a great day. So enjoy the sunshine. Right.